Welcome back to the Coding Fanatic YouTube channel. I'm your host Richard, and here at Coding Fanatic, I teach new Android developers how to grow quickly. If that sounds like content that you are interested in, join the mailing list over at codingfanatic.com. Learning Kotlin is a series where I go over my process for learning Kotlin, and I teach you guys some of the highlights of things that I've covered so that you have an easier time picking it up yourself. Picking up where I left off, I continued the code labs on the Android developer website. I started working on the adding a button code lab, which basically is what it sounds like. You learn how to add a button. It's pretty straightforward. So far, we've just gone over some of the basic parts of this particular UI element and gone over just one example with rolling dice and using that to kind of showcase what we've learned. So the first thing we did was we went over Int Range. Int Range is a new data type that I found with Kotlin, which it's a data type for a range of integers. So remember those lottery programs you did in Intro to Programming where you make an array of numbers, you make a random number or find a way to use like math.random, you generate a random number for using the size of the array, and then you pick a random number and that tells you the lottery, right? Well, Int Range makes this so much easier. By creating an Int Range data type, you now can store a range of numbers in one variable. So you don't have to say, oh, let's import the array class and then we're going to create this variable and we're going to have these two brackets and set all the ranges. Nope. It's very simple, very straightforward. Minimum number, range operator, max number. And that's it. Now the difference between this and an array of integers is it's a sequence of numbers, whereas with an array, it's a bunch of specific numbers. But if you ever found yourself in a situation where you needed to store a consecutive set of integers in one place, the Int Range data type is your best bet. You can return a random number from the range of integers using the random method. It's very straightforward. So let's say you had a range of numbers, or even better, we can go with the example that I used. So this, in the code lab, you go over simulating a dice roll. So you know a die has 6 sides. You create a variable with an int range from 1 to 6, and then you use the .random method you invoke that in order to return a random number from within the range. But I wanted to style it a little differently. I wanted to do things a little different. For this example, we create a class called dice, and we give it an attribute, sides, set it equal to 6, and then we use that in conjunction with the int range to randomize a dice roll. I gave mine 12 instead. Instead of 6, I made it 12. And for the int range, I did it from 2 to 12. The reason I did this is I wanted to simulate, if you can't already tell, rolling 2 dice at one time. So if you were to roll 2 dice, the minimum value you could get is 2, max is 12. So that was the whole point of my program. And I pretty much just used a combination of the int range data type, the random method, and created a new method called roll, which basically invokes that random method on that value on that variable and just returns the number. So pretty much I set it up to roll the dice for you and then tell you the result after. But you don't have to take my word for it. Let's see it in action. All right, so here we have the test file.kt. This is a file that I make for testing things out. We've got the dice class, which is for instantiating the dice objects. It's got a parameter called sides, and that's just the number of sides that it can have. Now, because I wanted to simulate rolling 2 dice, I set the sides equal to 12, and I created a function called roll, which pretty much randomizes a number between 2 and 12 and then returns that. So the point is, if you had 1 die, it'd be from 1 to 6, but for 2 dice, you can roll a minimum of 2, max of 12. So we use here you can see the range operator here from 2 to sides, which we see here is 12, .random, and then we're just returning that. So a random number between 2 and 12. Here in the main method, we instantiate 4 different dice objects for 4 players. And after that, we just print out the result. Okay, so if we Java jar, yep, enter, and you can see here we've got player 1 rolled an 8, 2 rolled 11, 3 rolled a 3, and 4 also rolled 11. And every time we run the program, it does it different. You get different numbers each time, which you should, because it's random after all. And yeah, each of the numbers is between the ranges of 2 to 12. So lucky for player 4 in this game, they got a double 6. That's pretty good. And Ludi, you get to go again. Yeah, that's about it. I think this project was pretty cool. It's very straightforward. The button section has a few more notes after this, but I wanted to take a breather to just go over what I've covered thus far. I think that, like I said earlier, it's not that int range replaces an array, but if you have consecutive numbers, then you don't need an array. You can just use an int range, and this way you can store a bunch of consecutive numbers. We've all seen those wonky algebra problems where they're like, oh, there are apartments 100, and then there's another one that's 100 plus whatever. No, I don't know. Anyway, the point is that if you have a set of numbers you want to store, just use int range. You don't need to use an array. So this kind of gives you a way to sort of customize it and remix it however you want. You know, that's kind of the whole point of software development, is finding multiple ways to do one thing, but find a way that works best for you. It all depends on what your project is, right? You know, for this one, I'm rolling dice. So if I were to, let's say I made a program that lets you roll multiple dice. Let's say you want to do 5, 6, or 7 dice. There, you could, by setting the sides to 6, you could customize it to then say, well, if it has this many dice, then take that number, multiply it by however many dice you want to use. Let's say you want to roll 5 dice, so 5 times 6, 30. Now for your minimum, you take the number of dice you want to use and set that to be your minimum. So you literally go from, like, you could even change the roll method to accept 2 integers, or 1 integer being the number of dice thrown. And then when you perform the operation, you create a new int range variable, with the lower end being that number that you passed, which is the number of dice, and then the higher end being that number times 6. You know, so that's just off the top. That's another way that you could switch it around. You know, but anyway, this has been pretty cool. I'm pretty sure that the end of this section culminates with building an app that rolls dice and like has an animation, all this good stuff. You'll see a demo of that on here as well, if that's where it goes. We'll see. But yeah, I'll keep on going and update you guys as I go along. So with all that being said, I'm your host Richard, signing out. Thank you all again for tuning in. If you like content like this, then join the mailing list at codingfanatic.com. Like, comment, subscribe, and follow me on social media in the links below. I started getting a bit more active on Twitter, so now I'm asking you guys asking more questions, and just trying to get the conversations going. You know, there's a lot of stuff in software development, and it can be kind of scary, but if you just have the conversations, you'll pick up a lot more than you think. So, you know, go ahead and follow me on Twitter, and be sure to follow me on Twitter. I don't know. I don't really have much else to say after this. All right, I'm signing out. So thank you all again for tuning in. This is your host, Richard, signing out, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.